Gateway Gamers podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Gateway Gamers. My name is Bryan, and today I'm running solo as we are in our two-player month. Every February we try to cover games that are specifically made for two players, which is kind of our wheelhouse as our gaming group mostly is RP and I. However, today I'm running solo and I am bringing you two games that are fit for two players, but also play solo very well. The first game I'm going to talk about today is Solstis. This is designed by Bruno Cathala and Corentin Labrat. Plays for about 15 minutes and published by Lumberjack Studios. And this is, again, a game made for one or two players. The idea of the game is that you are building a landscape or a mountain, basically going from the bottom all the way to the top and scoring more points than the person you're playing or the solo objective that you're playing. In the game, you're collecting tiles using some of the tiles in your hand. You play a tile down, and then you are collecting a tile from the top row that is the same color or the same number. And you are trying to make 2x2 grids of tiles to get spirit animals as well as score points at the end of the game. The other way to score is if you have a direct path, like if you have a whole grid of 8 tiles across, you'll get points for that. If you have tiles that go from the base of the mountain all the way to the top, and there's a fire at the top, if you connect a whole vertical row, you'll get points at the end of the game. So there's multiple ways to score. It's a point salad type of game, where a lot of the scores you don't know until the end of the game. And then once the deck runs out, the game is over, and you have this mountain mosaic built in front of you. To get more specific with the gameplay, for the setup of the game, you are taking 12 tiles, putting them in a display area, and these are the tiles that you're drawing from. And then you have 3 tiles in your hand to start with. So you're playing one of those tiles from your hand. So if it's a number 4, has a little pink 4 at the bottom, when you play that in your little area in front of you, building the mountain, in the display, if there is any pink cards or pink tiles or 4 tiles, you take that tile into your hand. So how that works is when you're putting these tiles down in front of you, they're all numbered and they're colored. The numbers and the colors represent where you are placing these tiles. So red has 10 tiles that go across the bottom. So you put the 1 in the 1 area, and then anything after that you kind of space out. So if you have a 2, it goes right next to it. If you have a 9, you kind of got to guess where down the row it's going to be in a 9. The next one up is orange. The next one up is green. These also have 10 tiles going across. Now, as you're building the mountain and starting to peak, the tiles begin to get a little less. So you have blue, which only has 8, pink, which only has 6, and then purple, which only has 4. Now, the artwork on this game is beautiful. It's just a mountain range scene. It's different trees. It's just kind of like nature. And then as you go to the top, it becomes more mountainous, like a real landscape would kind of become. So as I said, you're trying to build these 4x4 grids to collect spirit animals. You're also trying to create rows. So there is some strategy in this game where it's like, all right, if I need to build this 4x4 grid, I need this red tile to go next to my red tile. Then you need orange to go on top of it to make this 2x2 type grid. If you're not able to, you draw like a rainbow tile, which kind of takes the place of a number in a land if you can't play anything. And then if you're able to get the number later, you can replace that rainbow tile. It's just so the game's always kind of moving. Now, when you do make that 4x4 grid, you're taking a random card from the spirit deck. What these spirit are, they're just like animals that give you different abilities. They can either be endgame abilities or abilities that have an instant one-shot type effect. So there's a trout, which you could just take a rainbow tile and place it anywhere in your panorama. There's the eagle, which lets you draw a random tile from the land draw pile and put it in your panorama. There's a marmot, which lets you take another turn immediately. Ladybug, which at the end of the game gives you extra points if you have a fire in your row that hasn't been lit. So if you're not able to connect from the bottom all the way to the top, the fire token, you can still get points for it. The salamander gives you points for every rainbow in your diorama. So there's different effects. There's different ways they could benefit you. There is also an evil spirit in the game, the Lynx. The Lynx is basically just passed along back and forth between the players every time they kind of get a spirit animal, and whoever ends the game with the Lynx has to cover up one of their spirit animals with the Lynx. So basically just kind of negating some of the points. Not devastating, but it is just a fun little negative kind of aspect to the game that you really don't want. Now, I said you could play this game solo, and what that basically looks like is you're playing against this evil spirit. So you take the evil spirit out of the setup, and it's your opponent. It basically plays the same for you, where you're playing one tile, you're taking either the numbered or colored tile that you can play. When the spirit plays a tile that's just randomly drawn, and they could take all the tiles at the top that match their color and number, and they set up in the mountain. I will say the solo version of this game it's tough. I think you gotta house rule it a bit, because there's times where I'm playing and the evil spirit will draw like a red 4, and depending on luck, it'll take all the reds and all the 4s that are at the top, which can be a lot if it's just kind of random. So the few times I played the solo, it's not as enjoyable as a experience as when you play this with 2 human players. Overall, I enjoyed Solstice. It works well enough for what it is. Lean rules, it's fast to teach, it's quick to learn, and it fits as like just a nice little 2-player family type game. Trying to get everything moving while also having the fires to worry about, the spirits to kind of pay attention to, while also trying to make rows and looking for things. It has a good amount of thinking and kind of planning, but at the end of the day, it's very luck heavy because you don't know what's coming out. So you might focus on one color or one number, and then it just doesn't come out for a long time. The option to kind of get rainbow tiles is a must. It works well for what it is. You're just kind of giving up a tile from your hand to put into the row to gain a rainbow. It has its benefits, and I think that works well. It works better than just kind of losing a turn, so I think that was a good idea. And then I enjoyed the spirit animals. Again, that being very random, but there's none of them in there that are really useless. You kind of feel, no matter which one you're getting, it's something, whether it be a one-shot power immediately or end-of-game scoring. And it's good once you start getting these spirit animals out and they give you some end-game scoring, you can start focusing on that. It gives a good kind of idea of what you should be moving towards instead of just kind of randomly placing tiles to build a mountain. All this randomness gives this game a good replay value. I think a bit more variation would work. I think there is an expansion either out or coming out with maybe some more spirit tiles, which I think would help just to kind of add some new things. I think maybe some unique powers for players would help just to kind of give some difference, but overall, it's just the lack of variety definitely hurts how much this kind of hits the table before it starts to feel real samey, especially being capped at 2 players. Like, this is a great 2-player game, but I think if this gets an expansion down the road that you could play with more players or a new landscape that kind of makes it a bigger panorama, I think this would hit the table more. 2 players works well, but I think it's just kind of it's too small for what it is to keep this coming to the table a lot. With that being said, this will be in my collection for a while. It fills a little niche that I really don't have with other games. And also, it's small. The box is incredibly tiny. The components are super high quality and like tiny without feeling too fiddly. So I think even with the lack of variety, this is a game that I could transport easily. This is a game that would play well at bars. This is a game that would play well in restaurants while you're waiting for food because it's so quick and tiny. The core mechanics are solid enough that I think I could easily teach this to anybody pretty quickly. So it's not an awful game, but I think this is a game that down the road will benefit from either an expansion or just some kind of upgrade just to give it a little bit more. So that was Solstice from Lumberjacks Games. Also didn't mention the MSRP for that game is around $15, which is perfect. Anything under $20 is free in my eyes. The next game I want to talk about today is one that has been on my radar for a long time. It was a Kickstarter I missed out on, and I've been kicking myself since the Kickstarter ended. It is Nekojima from Unfriendly Games, designed by David Carmona and Karen Huynh. MSRPs for about $40. 1 to 5 players, 15 to 30 minutes, ages 7 plus. Now, I know I said all the games I'd be talking about today were basically 2-player only. I would never play this game with more than 2 players. I'll just say that at the beginning. So this is a 1 to 2-player games in my eyes. It would have to be a rarity for me to play 5 players. In Nekojima, you are playing an electrician who's in charge of installing high voltage lines, which sounds easy enough, but the island is extremely small with its 4 districts, and there's a plethora of cats that like to roam the island as well as the power lines. So you're trying to install the power lines while not bumping into the other power lines or disturbing any of the cat. So that being said, this is a dexterity game. So you're essentially just building these power lines while trying not to knock them down, which is pretty straightforward. So in that sense, this is a great game for a gateway gamer to teach and play. On your first turn, you're going to roll 2 dice, and they indicate which district of the game board that you're going to place your denchu, as it's called, or your power line. And these power lines are 2 extremely nice wooden pieces that are connected by a colored string that you'll be placing in the district. So if you roll red and purple, it's the food sector and the culture section of the island. So all your island is just a round, maybe small plate-sized wooden piece that you'll be placing all of these denchus on. There's also a colored section that has all the colors, so you get to place you get to choose which district you're going to put your denchu, and then there's a knife icon, which is your opponent places what district you're going to place the denchu in. Now, what size denture you're going to use is also random. You're going to draw a cube from the bag, and the colored cube represents which power line you're going to play. So if you draw a pink cube, you're going to play a short cable. If you draw a white cube, it's a medium cable, and a blue cube represents a long cable. And then there's also a black cube, which represents a cat, which we'll get to later. So when you're creating these denchu lines, there is some slight rules. You cannot place it upside down. A denchu cannot be stacked up upon itself. And then you can't wrap the denchu cable around itself to make it like more taut. So with those small amount of rules, you're just placing the denchus in the areas that you kind of were told to. So if it's in the red section and the purple section, you have to place these 2 denchus, one wooden side in the red, one wooden side in the purple. And you can't have the cables touch each other. You can't touch a cable while placing this, and then the cable can't touch the ground. So it kind of has to be manipulated enough that it's taut without being too loose as touching another cable. And that's really kind of it. Like it's how simple the game is in terms of placing the denchus. Now, obviously, as the game is moving on, when there's more wires and there's more pieces, it gets a little tougher to kind of manipulate that, and that's where it falls down, and you have a Jenga type effect where that person who knocks it down loses. Now, with the black cubes, as I said, that's when you play a cat. Cat is a simple, like cardboard, cartoony cat, and you're using its tail to kind of hook it onto a wire anywhere within the denchu area. The only rule for that is they can't touch the board, they can't touch the poles, or like 2 cables at the same time, so you can't have a hanging cat touching another wire. And that's all the cats do. It's just, they're just like an extra hindrance to the game, which is disappointing because I really thought the cats would be more in this game because it's kind of like Cat Island. The box art has a lot of cats on it. I thought they would be more involved. That's probably one of the more disappointing aspects of the game. Now, I will say in terms of replayability, because it's basically just a amped up version of Jenga, there are variants you can kind of play. There's the Urban Jungle variant, which has you, after you stack 2 poles on top of each other, you place a bird nest token. So in that game, you're only going to have a certain amount of space to kind of navigate. So you got to be really agile with that version of the game more than having good balance. Another variant is the duo variant, where if you are playing with more than 2 people, again, I would never, you're playing in pairs, so like one person goes, another person goes. Or you can have it done simultaneously by the 2 players. So one person holds one wooden piece, the other person holds the other wooden piece, and you're placing it together. That's fine, but it's, again, like it more than 2 players. I've played it a couple times, and just this is a game that just works with 2 players. Another version is skyscrapers. The skyscraper variant imposes a maximum of 2 poles per district. So you can only have 2 poles touching the ground. Other than that, you are building up. You have to be stacking on top of the other. So this one, where Urban Jungle was more of a agility and finesse, this is more of a dexterity of balance and working to not knock down the poles or have the wires touch. And then, like I said, the solo mode. Solo mode kind of plays exactly as you're playing. You're just kind of doing the same thing, but you're playing by yourself. So the same rules, but you're just not having another player there. So it's fine. You're just kind of like, oh, how high can I get this? There's no real points. There's no real anything else. It's just kind of like an activity more than a game. And with that being said, when you are playing 2 players, you could play this competitively or cooperatively. So you can play cooperatively and have the same goal of just you trying to get all of the wooden dentures on the board without it falling down. Again, fine. I don't know. This is a competitive 2-player game in my mind. However, play it however you want, whatever works for you. And that's kind of it. It's a version of Jenga in a way where you're just building up and trying not to knock down. This game was extremely disappointing to me. It's just whatever. Like, I am so bored of this game already just because there's a lack of variety. Like, there's different ways to play, but it's all the same, just stacking stuff up. I think the cats were extremely limited. Like I said, I thought they would do more, kind of, than they really do. I just think this game lacks replayability for what it is. I have better dexterity games in my collection that do the same thing but give you more options. Super Rhino Hero is an example. Men at Work, one of my favorite dexterity games, has a huge variety, even though it's kind of doing the same thing of building stuff up. So this game is absolutely fine. I think for the price point of, like I said, around $35 to $40, it's not there. The quality of the components are worth the $40. The components are fantastic. It's just the gameplay is extremely lacking for that price point. It's a low replayability. It's just kind of a disappointing game. So that's Nekojima from Unfriendly Games. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to when RP joins me again. We have a couple games coming up in the docket that are going to be incredible. Huge IP games that RP is going to lose his mind over, as well as build some excitement for you guys. But thank you again for listening. If you like what you hear, be sure to check out the Instagram because you'll love what you see. Every game we kind of talk about here, as well as games that I'm playing personally or RP playing personally, will be posted there. And check out our other socials, Facebook, and then be sure to like, follow, subscribe, or whatever you do, wherever you can. And thank you again, and ta-ta for now.